Hi, welcome to Gardening Coach Presents. This week, we're going to talk flushing. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome to Gardening Coach Presents. I'm Jeff, your gardening coach. This week we're talking flushing. I'll just get right into it. There's a lot of kind of myths and controversy behind the theory of flushing, why we do it, how we do it, all of that. So I'm going to kind of simplify this for you, make it a little easier to understand on where people are coming from when they suggest to use flush your plants. First off, there's a few reasons why we flush. The main reason we flush, or a lot of people think we flush, is generally right before harvest, and that's to try and clean the nutrients out of our plant per se. Theoretically, you really aren't gonna flush nutrients out of the plant. Now, if you're growing in synthetics, and this is where it gets kind of crazy, if you're growing in hydroponics with full synthetic base, you generally want to run a flush to keep salt buildup from happening. And that is within the channels of the plant, and that's also around the root base. So when we talk flushing, we're trying to keep a lot of that salty synthetic out, or we're trying to remove excess plant food from the medium that we're in because we may be overdosed it, or we've got some kind of issue around the root zone and we need to clean that out and rebuild it. So we'll kind of start off and go through the different variations of growing, the different types of growing that we can do, and how we're going to flush for those. So typically, if you're running a living soil or an amended soil, and that's all based off of a slow breakdown, like with some of the down-to-earth products that we have, generally you're not going to flush that. And that's just because no amount of water is going to accelerate that breakdown process. Now, we can wash out what's already broke down, but there's still going to be excess in there. So you really don't flush amended soil. You just kind of let it build up and then let the plants take it in, and then excess generally through the rain and stuff, and then the progression of the roots downwards pushes all that excess down the soil. So there's really no need to flush. Now, when we start talking potted plants and soil, and we're starting to feed with certain fertilizers that are synthetic or chelated, that are basically plant ready to use, if we've overdosed, we can absolutely flush some of that excess out by adding some more water. We don't necessarily need to, when I say flush, I don't want to say that we're dumping 40 gallons of water through a 10-gallon pot. We're just cutting off the feeding. As soon as we stop feeding for an extended period of time and we add water, that's considered a flush. So we can slowly release that out by just adding plain water instead of mixing it with our fertilizer. When we get down into hydroponic and full synthetic growth, whether it's a potted plant or whether it's in a flood tray table, if you're really supplying that inert media with a lot of nutrients, you typically will get salt buildup in that media. You'll get that around the root zone, and like I said earlier, you'll get that up the channel of the plant. Basically, when we start flushing through, like to remove that salt buildup, sometimes that salt buildup is so thick that just regular water would take a very long time to break that down. Once we apply so many weeks of straight water, the plant actually does become nutrient deficient because we're not fertilizing it. So we need to kind of find a way to be able to get rid of that excess salt without hurting the plant. And that's where a lot of these flushing agents come in. You're gonna see a lot of products that are pre-flush type use. So you're only using them like the last 2 weeks of your flowering cycle, and that's generally just to increase sugar and resin production within the plant. So I've got a few of those examples. Psycho has like their super sticky, New Millennium has their winter frost, we've got Humboldt County's own Snowstorm Ultra. These are basically just sugar enhancers. When we talk flushing agents, generally the plant has already processed a lot of these sugar enhancers and it's getting ready to shut down in the phase of its life. So basically, instead of trying to continuously pump the plant full of more nutrients that'll eventually be unused, we're going to use the nutrients that we have already within the plant and within the soil or the media, and we're going to use that to finish the plant for the last couple of weeks. So when we talk a flushing agent like Detox Flush Solution from Mad Farmer, Drip Clean from House and Garden, Sledgehammer Cleanse from Psycho, Flawless Finish, Flora Clean, Final Flush. Some of these products have nutrients, not necessarily plant food nutrients, but they have products that help break down some of those salts. They also have products that help break down some of the unused nutrients and allow your plant to finish metabolizing what it's got in it, which is generally the last week or two. So the plant's root system is essentially shut down at this point, other than the fact that it's actually releasing certain sugars and enzymes into the soil, and we're going to try and preserve some of that. So that's where these flushing agents come in, is instead of allowing it to drop all those sugars, we're going to allow it to stop pulling in nutrients and metabolize the sugars that it has and produce those kind of into our flour. And that's where these come in. There are some lines that really are just designed to break down salts, which is something that we really more use in hydroponic, and that's to help keep our reservoir and our lines clean and prevent buildup from happening. And then there's lines that actually work with the nutrient system in order to continue to allow your plant to feed or metabolize nutrients to the end of its life or until we harvest it. So again, with flushing, we generally, like I said, with amended soil, you don't really flush. With potted plants that we're fertilizing, we'll do kind of an intermittent flush, and I even apply this in my own garden, where I'll fertilize, add water. You know, my next watering is just water, no fertilizer, and then the next one is fertilizer, and then I kind of alternate through that. So that watering session is essentially my flush. That helps me mediate any nutrient buildup in my soil base. It's not that I'm washing anything out, I'm just controlling what's being fed to my plant. In a system that's an inert media, whether it's coco coir, rock wool, clay balls, something where your root zone is hanging in the water and being suspended in a nutrient solution and feeding straight off of that, that's something where every couple weeks or every few weeks we're going to run a flush solution just to make sure that we prevent salt buildup. You can do that if you do it regularly. You don't even necessarily need a flush solution, because that regular flow of water, whether it's once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, will prevent that salt buildup from happening. So that's kind of the through the grow flush. Towards the end, once the plant has pretty much finished up, it's in the last days of its cycle, it's starting to die out. Typically that last week we just stop feeding it nutrients, and that's where these type solutions come in, where you just add the flushing agent in with your regular watering, and that just allows that breakdown to happen throughout that week process, and then we're ready to harvest our fruit. So that's flushing in a nutshell. You can do a lot of research on it. You're going to come across a lot of, well, I heard this and I read this and this is where it came from. And my greatest advice on any amount of flushing is take into consideration your environment, take into consideration your media, and take into consideration how you're feeding your plant. Once we understand all that, then we can understand how to implement flushing and how to be able to control it to where we're not actually killing or depleting anything from our plant. We're literally just removing the excess. So stay tuned for more Gardening Coach Presents. If you have any questions, please feel free to come down to the store. Check us out online. Check us out on Facebook. Definitely keep up on these YouTube videos. the more you like and subscribe and share, we can definitely get more word out, and that'll help me be able to produce a lot more videos for you guys. So I appreciate the support. Keep watching. Stay tuned for more Gardening Coach Presents. Stay tuned next week on Gardening Coach Presents. We're talking training.